terrific. I really appreciated our time.
Lakes and sunshine and wine.
Not an easy topic, but well worth the discussion.
This is where I wave, right? Like this.
You got it. You've nailed it already.
Saturday, December 1st is World AIDS Day, and as part of the events taking place here in Kelowna, a movie will be screened by you, David. Tell us about We Were Here.
We Were Here was completed in 2011. It premiered at Sundance, and at the time, really, it was the first documentary that was made looking backwards at the darkest years of the AIDS epidemic with a specific focus on San Francisco. There really hadn't been anything that gave a reflective look back at what our community had gone through during those years.
If you had a bus ticket, it better be saying San Francisco, because that was the place to come.
And the movie is quite powerful. I looked at the trailer yesterday, and it's really moving and very telling, it seems, was that obviously was the goal of the movie.
Well, it's a hard story to tell in a non-emotional way. I mean, it was a time filled with, a tremendous amount of loss and fear and suffering, but also a tremendous amount of community activism and caregiving, and there was a beautiful side to the storytelling as well. So, it's a very potent movie. What it does is it basically uses only 5 people to tell a very epic story. So it's told in a very personal way, but the scope of the story is very large.
What kind of set you down that path to make this movie?
It was not something I had given a moment's thought to, really. I lived in San Francisco during the entire period that's portrayed in the film, and like most others who lived through that, I think we all sort of wanted to leave the worst of it behind. But I had a boyfriend who was significantly younger than I was, who had heard many stories from me about my experiences in those years. And he said, my generation doesn't really understand viscerally what that was about. And in the context of that conversation, the idea to make a movie came up, which initially I was reluctant to do because of the emotional intensity of revisiting it, but then I realized it needed to be done, and it should be done by somebody who lived through it rather than by an outsider.
Yeah. And Kim, do you think that maybe is a good reason to have the movie screened here?
I think it's twofold. I think we still have a lot of folks who want to have their story be told and to see their reflection of their experience that they've gone through. And I think the film gives that opportunity for folks to be able to see that on the big screen, as well as David was saying, is having folks today who may not have that connection to be able to have some sort of history sense with that and have a bigger context of sort of the challenges of today and the history of where it came from.
Yeah, so what all kind of went into creating a World AIDS Day event here?
Well, our World AIDS Day event, it was called Words and AIDS, started about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was because the community wanted, an opportunity to honor how their lives have been affected by HIV and AIDS, and as well as an awareness campaign for the community at large around HIV and AIDS. So we've always had opportunities to be interactive where people can have performances be shared and a chance for the community to get together, maybe ask some questions and socialize and support each other at the same time as well, because it can be heavy as a conversation for folks. There is still a lot of, information from the past that's come together where people are kind of still thinking like, oh wow, we used to look at it as a death sentence. We used to have a lot of sort of death marketing around HIV, and now it's, it is a manageable condition that folks live with, and we have amazing medications for folks to be able to take that not only help people live longer lives, but actually prevent HIV from being transmitted. So the fear of people living with HIV in the past was about a lot of the unknowns, because at the time science didn't have much information. And we have so much more information now about how to manage HIV in our communities. The biggest issue actually is just at this day and age is getting people tested, because it's the folks who don't know that they have HIV that don't have access to the medications because they're just unaware of what's available to them. It's one of our biggest challenges today.
What do you hope people get from the movie?
I think the movie functions on a lot of different levels. I think that, again, it does speak to people who lived through it in a kind of a validating way. It's like, on a certain level, it's like, wow, did we actually really live through all of that? Those of us who survived it. And also, I think the specifics of telling the history, I think, is important, as with any history, any kind of profound social history. I think it's important in a society that people understand where we and they came from. But I think that there's also underlying messages in the film around how an individual and how communities cope with unexpected calamities, because I think it's inevitable for each of us that at some point in our life we will be faced either by a small scale or large scale calamity that we had not anticipated. And the movie, I hope, offers both an inspiring and hopeful window into the fact that we do have strengths in us that we don't know that we have until they're called upon to be exercised. And I think sometimes people are afraid to come to the movie because they think it'll be depressing, but I think ultimately it's a very inspiring movie because it's about a community coming together in the face of adversity. And I hope that that's a message that young people in particular take from it.
Yeah, which was something I was going to ask you as well, is who do you think should come to see this movie? It's even, like I said, even the trailer really, it got me.
It's a very rich experience. Again, I think people are often afraid to see what they think is an AIDS documentary, but it's a very rich emotional journey that people go on when they see it. And I would say universally people have felt so glad that they've had the opportunity to see it, particularly with an audience, because there's a kind of a rich communal experience that people go through, that you come out at the end feeling very kind of inspired. One of the greatest reactions I got to the movie was from a woman in her early 80s who said she had really no gay friends and had no experience of the epidemic because she didn't have any connection to that community. She said, but what I got from watching your film is that I realized that I'm not always as good a friend as I could be to my friends who are in need. And I thought, well, that's really wonderful for me because she's not the audience I made it for, and for her to come out of it with that kind of sense of both self-reflection and, a kind of an idealistic message was very moving for me.
And Kim, how does it feel for you to be able to help present this to the community?
It's definitely an honor. I think our community is very robust and is very been able to respond to a lot of stigma and fear around HIV, and so be able to create a supportive environment to be able to watch the film and to be able to connect and be able to show our community like some of the great, amazing things that we've been able to work together to get through, to be able to have AIDS service organizations and provide support for folks living with HIV in our region and elsewhere. Really shows a lot about what we can do collectively as a community and as a community organization. It's about us working together, and so I think this is a great opportunity for it to come together and kind of leave being like, all right, like our hearts are open, and there's a lot that we've carried through to this point, and there's still so much work we can do together when we work collectively.
And David, the movie got some pretty serious accolades. Like it was shortlisted for a 2012 Oscar.
Yeah, it was shortlisted for Academy Awards. It was on a lot of 10 best lists, and not just of documentaries, of films in general. It was nominated for Best Documentary Independent Spirit Awards, which is kind of the indie Oscars. It's done very, very well. And it premiered at Sundance too, which is sort of the best you can do with a documentary. So I'm proud of it. I feel like that the movie really, even though it was something that I hadn't really wanted to do initially, I feel like it's the most important work that I've done, and I feel like that it will continue to serve multiple purposes for a long time, which is very gratifying.
And we're lucky to be able to see it here in Kelowna.
We are very privileged not to be able to show the film, but to actually have David Weissmann be here, to be in attendance, and to be able to have the connection, to be able to have a question and answer period, because I think that's one of the powerful things about being able to see a film is to be able to connect with folks afterwards and be able to share our connections about it. And we're really grateful to be able to have him here he's been here for a week, I think, so.
Not quite, but
yeah, almost a week. So we're going to try to keep him stay here longer, but we'll hold him as much as we can.
Yeah. Now, if anybody has any questions, but they want to do it in a more private way, does the Living Positive Resource Center offer suggestions and ways for folks to do that? Yeah, so
at the film we will have some of our staff and board members who will be available with our T-shirts. We'll say Living Positive Resource Center. So if folks want to maybe take one of them and go aside and just be able to have a chance to reflect more personally, or to be able to connect about some of the questions they want afterwards, we'll be on hand to be able to do that. We'll have some resources available as well, but that will be the quick kind of catch through, is to look for a person wearing the Living Positive Resource Center T-shirts.
Wonderful. So just remind us when doors open at 7?
7 o'clock, yeah. So it'll be at Okanagan College, December 1st. That's Saturday, and you just walk into the S building, and the theater is in the S building there. It's free of charge. We're grateful to have a grant from UBCO on one of their community grants to be able to put on this event and bring David out for the event.
Yeah, well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.